Hello and good morning, everybody. It's me, Julian, and today I would like to talk about what Claire Carlisle in Transcendence for Beginners calls the self-consecration of a life, which is another way of talking about the theme of devotion and how you can use acts and, if you will, intentions of devotion as a way to lead a rich and meaningful life. To live a devotional life doesn't have to be religious. It's about paying attention to the world, to your surroundings. It's about giving time and love. It's about living a quiet and gentle life. You could say that to live a life of devotion is to find the hidden moral power of an ordinary existence, or perhaps a seemingly ordinary existence. Claire Carlisle puts it like this. She says, "Since devotion is not merely a feeling, but essentially active and expressive, it has a shining, transmissive quality. It is beautiful, the self-consecration of a life." And she's actually making a tacit reference to the closing passage of Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time, in which the narrator finally realizes that his entire life has been leading up to one point, namely the point at which he will write his book. Proust writes, "I had made up my mind to consecrate it, my life, to the power that was ebbing away." This idea that we all have a certain finite amount of energy and time and purpose, and that we can harness it to devote ourselves to something is, I think, a very powerful one. And I think that in your own life, you can find quiet ways of incorporating acts of devotion, be it gardening or cleaning your home, or spending time with loved ones. In fact, the word devotion actually goes back to the Latin dare operam, which essentially means to pay attention. Dare, to give, opera, labor. In other words, to give oneself to something or someone completely. And the paradox that I'd like to explore in this video, which can perhaps be useful to you and certainly has been an idea that has been preoccupying me as of late, is that by means of devoting ourselves to something, giving ourselves completely to a project or a person, we can actually find ourselves. We can lead an authentic life, if you will. We can live truthfully. In fact, for the ancient Greeks, this idea of living truthfully was actually considered heroic. The word hero for the Greeks was actually, I've written it down here, Andres Epiphanes, which means a man who is fully manifest. And this idea of living a life that is fully manifest has nothing to do with living an exemplary life, with being better than others or having more power or status or money than other people. In fact, this would be considered a low form of life. Instead, to be fully manifest, to live truthfully, is to live in accordance with one's true self, which is to say, to fully give oneself to the world, to do something with a gentle and quiet strength. And I think the people who live a true life, who are at peace with themselves, therefore have a nobility of character, if you will, a nobility which Aristotle characterized as the kalon. And the kalon was a dedication or a commitment to the beautiful and to the good and to virtue, which is to say, to live in accordance with the good meant to be at peace with yourself and therefore to achieve an inner beauty, a radiance that in so doing could also illuminate others. And that, for the ancient Greeks, is also what philosophy is about. When Plato talks about theory, it's not just the contemplation of the forms, but quite literally, when you follow the etymology of the word, it is going to the sacred sites. It is a process of pilgrimage, if you will. It is about living a life. Philosophy as an ethic of living in accordance with the good and therefore being at peace with yourself and at peace with others. And we can trace this even into Christian thought. Like, one of my favorite maxims is from St. Francis of Assisi, in which he says, I'm going to try to get it right. He says, "There is nothing so strong as gentleness, and nothing so gentle as true strength." It's a beautiful way of inverting the idea that power is about making other people feel small. It said the strongest people are gentle giants. Their strength comes from within because they're not repressed. They're not at war with themselves. They don't need other people to feel weak in order to feel strong. Instead, true strength is when you have that presence, that calm, quiet, generous energy that means that you can lift other people up as well. In fact, one of the movies that I think explores this nobility, this quiet heroism quite well, is one of my favorite films titled Perfect Days by Wim Wender that explores the life of a seemingly ordinary man who works as a quote-unquote mere or lowly toilet cleaner. And yet the way in which he dedicates himself to this seemingly lowest of work is extraordinary. There's something monk-like, something very ascetic to the way in which he dedicates himself to his task, which is indeed therein elevated to a craft. It essentially makes the argument that by means of paying attention, in other words, by acting with grace, and once again, by devoting ourselves to others, we can achieve a quiet and gentle and calm focus, a rich existence. Which is to say, this film essentially explores the quiet heroism of a seemingly ordinary man who, in this noble life, essentially becomes an illuminating source for others. But it's not a preachy film. It also explores, I think, what you could say are some of the limits of this life. The isolation, the sadness, the gentle melancholy that comes with choosing to dedicate oneself completely to the hidden power of an ordinary life, or what you might also call the moral power of an ordinary existence. And so perhaps there is a paradox between the desire to want to lead an ordinary and quiet and noble life, but also the ambitions that we have to assert ourselves apropos the world. I've certainly found myself straddling this divide, where sometimes I want to live like a monk, sort of locking myself in a library somewhere and completely dedicating myself to my books and my reading. But at the same time, I enjoy going out into the world and traveling and having new and rich experiences and accumulating experiences, if you will, and meeting new people. And I think that finding a balance between the sort of rich and gentle pleasures that come with slowing down and devotion, combined with sort of the intrinsic motivation that that can give you to then lead a rich life is quite important. In fact, recently all paths seem to be leading me back to Deleuze, and by means of Deleuze, back to Spinoza, and of course, Nietzsche. And on page 1 of Deleuze's book on Spinoza, he actually writes that Nietzsche understood that the mystery of a philosopher's life, the secret, if you will, was that he took the ascetic virtues of humility, poverty, chastity, and turned them to his own ends, tried to use them to live a rich and abundant inner life. In other words, not simply to chase what other people thought was important, money, status, power, etc., but instead to try to live the richest and the biggest life, the most manifest existence, that by means of embracing a gentle and quiet existence, you can thereby also tacitly tap into a rich and illuminating life. And this is something that Spinoza was talking about as well. Basically, what Spinoza calls nature is, quote unquote, a life no longer lived on the basis of need in terms of means and ends, but according to a production, a productivity, a potency in terms of cause and effects, which is to say, for Spinoza to live in accordance with nature, which for him was to live in accordance with God or the godly, one of the more controversial arguments that Spinoza made, at least in his time, was to equate nature with God, was that when you live in accordance with your nature, when you live in accordance with your task, your project, your silent vocation, devoting yourself completely to your life, you are therefore also devoting yourself to the higher, to the good. Or to put it in Greek terms, you are living in accordance with kalon. And this means that the philosopher is someone who lives a gracious life, an intellectually generous life, of dedicating themselves to ideas, the contemplation of forms, but also who can go out into the world and live a rich existence, and by means of education and communication, be amongst others. And the truth is that philosophy, therefore, is but another craft. You can do this with any craft. No matter what your passion is, if you dedicate yourself to it, if you devote yourself to it completely, and you give it time and attention, and thereby love, you will have found in and through your craft a vehicle for not only self-manifestation, remember what the Greeks called heroism or nobility, but also a means of being there for others and connecting with others. When you create something and you gift it to others, you form a bond or a connection. This could be something that you've drawn or woodworking that you've done. It could be anything that you've paid attention to. Even cleaning up in front of your home can be a way of giving other people the invitation of your tidy stoop, as it were. And so to live with intentionality and with generosity and with grace, I think, is about living in accordance with your nature, allowing yourself to be exactly who you are, and dedicating and devoting yourself to what you find to be most important in the world. And in so doing, creating a little opening for others in and through which they can enter into this communion themselves. And I think ultimately what I'd like to convey in this video, as short as it is that you should give yourself the time to explore who you are and what you'd like to do with your life, and see where it takes you, and find the thing that clicks for you. In the same way that you don't have to fall in love immediately and marry the first person you meet, you don't have to fall in love with your work or your passion immediately and do it for the rest of your life. Instead, keep exploring, keep searching, keep trying to live in accordance with your nature, but do so in a way that comes from a place of quiet confidence, of gentle, if you will, noble grace. And then if you can achieve that calm, if you can achieve that quiet devotion, you will find not only that your capacity for love and creativity increases, but also the world around you becomes more rich and more loving and more beautiful in return. And I'll conclude by saying that I think that perhaps today we have poor role models, which is to say we look at the internet and we see people bragging about their money and their private jets and all these things. But there's something very spiritually empty, I think, in that, something very hollow and dissatisfying. And instead, perhaps there is a true reemergence or desire or awakening that there is more to life, that there must be something richer than that there must be something truer than that. And perhaps therein there is an opportunity for us to rediscover a better and more fulfilling form of life. And so my goal here has been, by means of some short meditations and readings, to hopefully encourage you to seek out that life for yourself, whatever shape or form that may take. I'll also be posting a longer lecture, like a 45-minute lecture, to my Patreon, in which I talk more about Walter Benjamin's storyteller, as well as Paul Valéry's idea that what we are lacking is patience and dedication to craft, that no one is willing to make that, which takes long to make, as it were. But that's going to be an audio only for my Patreon. In the meantime, thank you for being with me here this Monday morning, and I will see you soon. Have a wonderful week.